Ladies and gentlemen, this is internet personality Vangelus, and there have been a few upgrade sets released in the past year for Combiner Wars Devastator. I haven't actually messed with any until now. This is a review sample of DNA Design's DK-01 Devastator upgrade kit, made to work with any of the 3 releases of that gift set. Also, in case you can't comprehend spatial limitations, the box clearly lets you know that an entire Devastator will not also be found inside. Instead, there's a tray of parts. I'll be applying these to the Unite Warriors version of Devastator primarily. There's also a bunch of paperwork, including a notice that there's a superfluous triangle in the set. I'm not sure if this is only a thing that we early reviewers will see, or if it'll be in the boxes released to retailers as well, but I can confirm that it is entirely unnecessary. The DNA Devastator head is slightly shorter, but otherwise borderline identical to the original, except that it has space for 2 LR41 batteries, not included, for the purposes of light-up optics, and features a Y-axis of neck movement. It also mounts on this green plate. This gets rid of the purple base of Devastator's neck, but this also means the head parts forms. It's not the end of the world, but I really want to know if I could just swap this head onto Hook's original purple assembly. I wanted to find out for you guys, but I can't get the original Devastator head to split apart. There's one screw, but I've got to assume there's also a ton of glue in there. If anyone pulls it off, let me know. Long Haul is the recipient of the next bunch of parts, starting off with DNA's own take on filling in those rectangular slots on the fronts of Devastator's thighs. There's also an underslung clamp, which allows you to store the 2 purple wing bits under the truck bed rather than on top of it. Unfortunately, this isn't as smooth as the original storage solution, doesn't click together with audible satisfaction, and always feels about a millimeter off from fully locking up tightly. Also, they cannot stay there when you transform Long Haul into robot mode. The old purple Deva hands need to be shoved out of their mushroom peg mountings to be replaced with DNA's more articulated offerings. I was able to bare hand all of this, but it was a little tough. At least that means tight wrist swivels. Next, an entirely new component attaches to the old forearms, and the whole thing can fold up to form a much longer and double-sided missile spam rocket pod thingy. The 2 engorged weapons can then be placed atop the back of Long Haul's truck bed, as you do, and they take up just enough extra space to make it too cramped to comfortably put the purple wings up there as well, hence the underslung clip piece. The other 2 big chunks of DNA-designed componentry can then plug down onto Long Haul's forearms, making his vehicle mode still able to carry all the large extra combiner mush, and also giving it 4 barrels of laser doom. The last add-on is for Mixmaster, and it makes his rear-mounted faux cab into a full-on real cab, with 4 front wheels and 2 rear wheels. It slides on like a big old shoe, but then uses a small pair of pegs to fully lock into place. It also needs Mixmaster's head to be in its robot mode position to fill out the new front bumper, and features extra downward nubs to match the 2 that are built into the chemist's head guns. Long Haul and Mixmaster are the 2 Constructicons whose vehicle modes are the most affected by this set, with Long Haul turning into a friggin' tank, and Mixmaster gaining a full-on secondary cab. Unite Warriors Mixmaster's additional silver paint apps benefit this add-on piece, as the main one is visible on the front grille area, while the Combiner Wars version ends up with a big green unpainted plate in that spot instead. By the way, DNA Designs used a green plastic that totally matches up to my own eyes, though I should note once again that I don't see much of a difference between the Combiner Wars and Unite Warriors versions of the Constructicon's main plastic hue. Unfortunately, the new cab covers up the mounting point for Unite Warriors Mixmaster's personal firearm, but it's not as though there aren't any other places to store it amongst his teammates. Mixmaster transforms into robot mode in mostly the same way, until you get to his head, which is already in place. His new cab slides back its 2 outer edges to clean things up, using a somewhat finicky series of hinges, pegs, and rails to pull it off. It's not hard to do, but definitely does not feel as punch-me-in-the-face sturdy as the rest of the toy. Don't yank too hard on the small moving components. The end result looks fine to me. Mixmaster was already kinda weak, and this sort of flows into the mixing drum that was already hanging off his back. However, this also adds more weight, meaning Mixmaster's hips will readily give out and lean back as soon as you let him go. The new arm and shoulder pieces can work with the individual Constructicons as weaponry, giving you a longer 9-barrel missile launcher with 2 ends, while the shoulder chunks have little flip-out handles to totally work as big-ass double-barrel cannons. You can also split up the missile launcher into the original forearm launcher and a new smaller sibling launcher. Across the board, the new handles are a little floppy, and I'm not sure if the peg inside the new forearm piece is actually meant to be a handle, but I love digging out as much cross-mode play as I can from add-on parts like these. Mixmaster's transformation into a leg is mostly unchanged. You just have to do an extra spot of work to clean up the lower hanging area of the new front bumper. After that, it's business as usual until we have us an armless Devastator. That's where a majority of the add-on mush comes into play. Oh, also, since they aren't involved in the combination anymore, I've been folding the long haul forearms away like this on the Unite Warriors version. I haven't got a solution for the non-swiveling Combiner Wars version, so enjoy your vestigial kidney arms. Anyway, the double-barreled cannon things plug into Scavenger and Bone Crusher to form the new main shoulder assembly. There are oval-shaped blocks designed to plug into the sliding mechanisms inside the Armstructicon's legs, and tabs for their ankle slots. The forearms and hands are easiest to attach if you split them apart to ensure a solid lock with the inner peg-hole connection, but you don't have to split them apart. Listen, this is what their instructional video was doing. This all culminates in a sliding tab slot piece that feels industrial and badass, binding the underside of the forearm with straight-up piston detail. The whole mush can then plug into Devastator's shoulder nubs and lock in double solid by integrating with the chest wings, just like the front-facing treads used to on the stock configuration. This all leads to a proper rigid assembly. Finally, fold out the head, then put it away, because DNA Design's head is on its own separate plate. I still wish I could have gotten the original head dismantled to try and fully integrate this component. Standing tall, the DNA Devastator's Mixmaster leg pulled a pretty cool trick to change the shape of its cab from truck mode to foot mode. It adds just an extra touch of flavor to the Neo G1 that permeates this set of toys. The longer forearms do their part to play with the Devastator's proportions just a wee bit, and the new shoulder assemblies are delightful. Absolutely, this is mostly because Unite Warrior's long haul could rotate his now unused arms out of the way, but I love how they simply add a subtle nudge of width without bellowing their presence upon sight. The same can be said about those thigh divot fillers. They blend in so well I keep forgetting their add-on parts, and they add just the barest sprinkle of extra color in their silver rivet detailings, once again blending in a piece of the DNA kit really well through subtlety. The new hands are fully posable, so how do they hold a gun? Well, each one has a gray tab installed in the palm, which slots up into the bottom of the gun handle. These tabs also get in the way of making the hands into fists, so thankfully they are removable. And there are two! So if you have a pair of Devastators on hand, you can get the DNA upgraded one to dual wield and lay down some akimbo blat blat blat! The new head's green platform has the added boon of cleaning up and simplifying the layout of Devastator's collar, and hey, it's got the Unite Warriors gimmick with a silver face. Goggles up or down, you can flip a switch on the back to light up the eyes, and thanks to the use of a separate piece for the optic plastic, the glow is punchingly tight. The options continue to grow with the inclusion of a swap-out face so that you can change the expression from grim stoicism to a properly thuggish Once again, goggles up or down, eyes on or off. My only major criticism here is that the lit eyes almost nullify the goggles since they're fully translucent, but I get the impression that a lot of people like that effect. So I admit I'm probably in the minority when I say I'm not into the visual of glowing eyes behind a nice plate of super robot sunglasses. Oh, also you can peg in a crest and cheek plate piece for a super cheap Prowlistator cosplay. Again, this seems to please enough people, but I'm not satisfied with a Prowlistator unless Hook's turned into the right leg and an actual Prowl toy has turned into the upper torso. Read the comics! By the way, be careful with this add-on piece, as its pegs are thin and its entire structure is, well, just as thin. So as I mentioned, the head, it can still look left and right, but now it can also look up. And then as you make it look up, this little, gray piece in here that is the Y-axis joint, it kind of clicks up inside the head, so if you want to put his head back down, you then also have to push his head down. It'll click once or twice. So that's normal. Also, him looking up generally is going to be used for poses where he's not standing straight up, so it'll be him, hunched over looking at you. I don't mind all the exposed stuff in there for that reason, but be aware of it. Anyway, the new meat of this dude's posability is on his shoulders, because now his shoulders move at this axis on a big friendly ratchet joint, and then they can move this way on another big friendly ratchet joint. Those ratchet joints feel great. This thing can fold out a little bit more if you get that stuff out of the way of this box. So that's a huge amount of shoulder posability, and the thing I like about it is that the underarm, I think, blends real well between the silver painted stuff that's revealed when you move the joint up, pistons going down into the tire. It just feels very subtle, and the thing that I also like is that the axis is here and not up here. Also, this green plate, another little problem with it, it only really tabs in one spot, and since it's not supported by being literally attached to the back of his spine, sometimes it pops back out. I wish I could have gotten that head open. There's one more joint on here that I wasn't expecting at all. It's not ratcheted, but if you move this up, you see how there's like a separation here. This bit can butterfly out, which is pretty dang cool. It basically butterflies out off of this spot here. There's a friction nub. The nub is not very visible, but the hole for it is right there. So that will lock it into its base position, and then you'll unlock it to do the butterfly thing. Since it's friction, it can get loose. I think you're mostly using this for very specific poses. So there are 3 axes of movement in the shoulders, and that makes me super pleased. There are also new hands. Before I get to the new hands, I'm going to show you the one bummer about this dude. Mostly on this arm. So on this arm, the original shoulder was up here, and the bulldozer blade, being fully folded over, is kind of preventing that shoulder from moving. So if I move this up here, give him something heavy to hold, for the most part, it should still hold decently together. But it doesn't lock that shoulder joint on the inside mounting of this, which I think is kind of weird. Over here, poor Scavenger has nothing holding him in place, and there's a reason why I've given Scavenger the gun. Because if you move the shoulder joint forward, number one, like the elbow joint on Devastator is still going to suffer a bit from holding a gun. But if I let go, that just falls right down on the old original shoulder joint. I wish something inside here locked into something inside here to hold all that together. That's like the one flaw on these shoulders I'm finding. And if I go in here to this mushroom peg that is the original shoulder swivel, like if I thicken that mushroom peg up with some floor polish, a ton of it, I can probably alleviate this. I like to think I'm a little particular about my posable robot hands, especially when they're this big. And I'm kind of digging these. Like, they've got the usual wrist swivel. This peg sometimes flops in and out, and then when it gets stuck in there and I want to get it out, sometimes it's a bit harder to get out. I could probably thicken that joint, but you know, it's always a shame to have to say, I could thicken it myself. Anyway, the wrist swivel's not the only wrist joint. There is also one of these with like some sculpted stuff inside of here. That's super cool. So like Devastator can open his hand up and like brace himself against the ground, or you know, go stop. As for the actual posability of the hand, I'm liking it. Going to the normal fingers first. The ball sockets in there do the thing that I want to see when there are ball sockets inside a knuckle, which is that there is an amount of spread available. And I'm getting very picky about spread, so I'm happy to see spread here. So that's a ball socket and then a hinge right beneath it. So we've got the ball socket that goes there, but there's also a hinge right there, if you want to fold at that point instead. There's a hinge there and a hinge there. As for finger length, they are all slightly different lengths. I still wish that the difference was a bit more apparent, kind of like more like on a human hand, but that's just me. As for the thumb, there is a ball socket connection into the base of the knuckle of the thumb, and there's a joint, and then there's a joint, and fold it in down like that. So forming a fist is one of my first big tests, and I think this thing can do a pretty darn good fist. Very much thanks to the way that the thumb joint works. You can also give you know, a hitchhiker's thumb, which can also be a thumbs up. And thanks to all that spread, he can do the Vulcan. So DNA did a real good posable hand here. I'm hoping on full figure projects, should they do any large scale ones, that this kind of posable hand tech will make its way in there. Because I'm really liking it. It's a good posable hand. And like I think that the fingers, they appear a little bit thin, but they're not like spindly thin. They kind of work like when this thing's a fist, the size makes sense to me. So I don't think they fell into the trap of doing a skeletal hand for the sake of getting all the joints in there. It still feels properly meaty when I have it folded right, and it's all ready to, you know, punch some Dinobots in the back of the spine and make their eyeballs pop out. So the fresh posability on Devastator, I think it's pretty solid from the shoulders down to the hands. As the 3 major Devastator upgrade kits released photos, released info, and then released themselves, DNA Designs was the one I had decided to wait for, and I feel like that wait has paid off, but it likely isn't the clear-cut king of the mountaintop for every single one of you. What I wanted was a Mixmaster cab that wasn't simply a Devastator shoe, and shoulder upgrades that integrated nicely while keeping the axis of the shoulder joint down below Devastator's shoulder line. And DNA's set delivers in those respects. They also nail the posable hands, offer cross-mode play patterns for most all of the major upgrade pieces, and produced a build quality that feels up to par. But man, do I wish those shoulder chunks had fully locked the original Devastator arms down tightly. It's not a constant problem, but I found myself simply confused at the lack of a connection between the new shoulder pieces and the chunks of vehicle mode that no longer need to swivel back and forth. It just feels like something's missing in there. Also, I totally admit that my opinion on this whole set is colored by the fact that I'm applying DNA's parts to a Unite Warriors Devastator primarily. I love the fact that there's engineering and design to their Mixmaster cab, but absolutely, its effect may be diminished on the Combiner Wars version's unpainted mounting point. And absolutely, the Combiner Wars version will end up with vestigial kidney arms. I don't know, peg some guns in there. Have fun. Regardless, this set does what I wanted it to do, and with visual and engineering styles that I very much prefer to the other two kits, which, admittedly, I haven't actually handled myself. I'm happy with DNA's box of parts, pleased with the quality of their first release as a company, and can't wait to see how their first full figure turns out whenever it comes out. Anyway, this has been Internet Personality Vangelus, and I for one would like to know who will be the badass that not only owns all three Devastators, but will dress them up in Perfect Effects, X2s, and DNA's upgrade kits for the ultimate comparison shot, because it probably won't be me. I never get to be the badass.